Hey, can we talk about UFOs and aliens and all that stuff? Yeah, some recent research information has come my way, and a startling conclusion. Haha. I'm Rollin Frost. I wear a lot of different hats in my life. Safety engineer, chemical engineer, environmental specialist, astrologer. And oftentimes I've been asked about the UFO. Now, the things that I post here on this list of blogs are normally hard science backed up with real experience. In this case, however, these are other people's experience I'm going to share with you, and some of my own conclusions, which I have not experienced. I never saw a UFO, but here we go. Now, I will try to be brief, but as you can see, there's a list of questions here that need to be answered. And a couple of the first questions are, why should another alien race come here to Earth? What the heck is valuable here? When I grew up reading science fiction novels, I thought, oh, it's the water. Nah, there's water all over. Oh, it's the gold. No, there's gold all over, all the heavy metals on the asteroids and stuff. You know, an alien race who space travels can find all that stuff out there. What's so valuable here? The answer is, we are. Yes, our DNA is like an evolved creature, like a supercomputer that took 3 billion years to slowly build it. We got it wrong, we threw them out. We got it right. Evolution. So the Earth has a long history. Take 3 billion years of evolving these very sophisticated mechanisms, and DNA is the key. Let's start with some astronomy. Some things you may not know, or maybe you've forgotten, is that we live in a spiral galaxy. There's 1 billion stars here, 1 billion or more. It turns out our sun is way out here. You know, it's out here on the edge of one of the arms, on the far part of it. We're not anywhere near the center. Maybe we're over here. At any rate, we're not even close to the center of our galaxy. We're out in the boondocks. Why would anybody want to come here? It's a long ways from nowhere. Here's the thing. When you're out in the boonies, when you're out here on the edge of the thing, there's less stuff flying all around. I mean, it takes time to evolve a sophisticated animal. Time means 3 billion years without something big hitting you and crashing into you. Look at all the craters on the moon. I mean, so being out here means it's harder to find us. It takes a long time to get here if you're coming from someplace else in the galaxy. However, all this stuff in the center of the galaxy, there's just too much radiation, too much heat, things all flying around. Nobody ever gets 3 billion years to develop. So being way out here on the end of one of these arms has a lot of benefits. It's more peaceful here. Harder to get to. So the first problem we have with UFOs is if they're coming from someplace in the galaxy, it's a long ways to go. Speed of light and all that physics and stuff. You buy into that? But at least we don't have so much stuff crashing around out here trying to stop our evolution. What do they say? Location, location, location. Well, the reason we have such a neat home here is because we have a good neighbor that keeps a lot of that stuff from crashing into us. Jupiter is huge. It has a great gravity. You know, passing comets aiming at us get pulled right into Jupiter. Just happened a decade or so ago, remember? A big comet broke into pieces and hit Jupiter. So Jupiter grabs all the incoming stuff, all the asteroids and comets, and protects us. On the other side, of course, the sun does the same thing. So that's why we have such a peaceful neighborhood. Now, the most sophisticated nervous system, animal, that this world has evolved so far, it would seem, is your body, us. We have a consciousness that's built in threes: a reptile consciousness, then a mammal consciousness, then the great cerebellum where we think and things. And we're telepathic. And what an amazing animal, 3 billion years. You know, incoming things, you know, did away with all our competitors. The great comet impact 12,900 years ago, you know, was one of them. But we are valuable, you know. There isn't a lot of life around in the galaxy because of all the incoming stuff. It doesn't have a chance. Let's go back to our list. Why did they how did they find us? I call it nuclear blink. You know, when you set off an atom bomb in the atmosphere, it blinks. There's a thing of energy that goes out through the whole galaxy. And after 1945, for a few years, we set off hundreds in the atmosphere. Yeah, our Earth was just blinking like, you know, blink, 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 blink. And somebody finally noticed. And they said, hey, what's going on? Some animal evolved far enough to do the nuclear stuff. And that makes them very unique, so we better go have a look. The first one started showing up like Roswell, say in 1947, 2-3 years after the first blinking, the nuclear blinking. And then in the 50s, suddenly we had abductions. Somebody is sampling something. They seem to be very interested in eggs and sperm. Yeah, why is that anyway? Well, put yourself in the place of these guys that came in, whether they're Greys or whoever they are. It's a money trip. They're like Captain Cook going around the world looking for valuable plants and animals. And they spied us and said, oh, look at that human being, great DNA. Now we got to take some samples back. But the problem is, once you start setting off all of this nuclear stuff, there's radiation in the air. And we discovered chemistry and started putting pesticides in the air and pollution. And what happens? The DNA degrades. Yes, there are breaks in it. You could have a super sophisticated computer program and all these intricate little pathways in your computer, and you just break one of them, and you have a glitch, and the computer doesn't work very well, does it? Yeah. So they had to get in right away. And they had to find ladies, and especially because they have all the eggs in their body, you know, forever. So they had to find ladies born, you know, such that they had all their eggs before 1944-45. After that, a lady's eggs start getting breaks in the DNA due to the radiation. Now, the most interesting thing that came up recently was somebody finally started keeping track of all these abductions. And a most amazing thing came up. Most of the abductees are green or azure-eyed. And they had a certain blood type. And it's selective. The guys that are taking the DNA wanted the very best. They're going to bring the seeds back a long ways, and we don't know what to do with them. But they wanted these people who had green or azure eyes. Why them? Well, here's the thing. We've had a lot of research recently by amazing people. Yeah, people like Graham Hancock. These guys have gone all around the world looking at these huge pyramids and stone megaliths, they call them, that humanity couldn't have done. And you know what they discovered? That there was a huge comet that hit the Earth 12,900 years ago. Yeah. So the Ice Age went along for 200,000 years. 2-mile-high ice caps over North America and Europe. And it started to warm up a little bit, and bang, the comet hit 12,900 years ago, and it hit the ice caps and it melted them all. And we slipped back into, you know, ice water everywhere, and the oceans went up 400 feet. And then something else happened 1,000 years later. Another pieces of the same comet came in, hit the water, and all the hot water went up in the air and it warmed up. And here's where we are now in our nice warm period. Well, they call this a younger Dreyfus. And now these guys have proven it was a comet, and it wiped out everything that humanity had built, and especially what they call the antediluvian culture, the high culture that existed during 100,000 years of Ice Age stuff. Yeah, those people, their civilization was wiped out. Just a few survivors seemed to get out. Now, they couldn't kickstart the hunter-gatherers, the remnants of humanity that were on the ground and left over around the tropics. Nope. But what happened was that they found they had already built some pyramids, the really huge, big professional pyramids in Egypt and Teotihuacan, and stonework that, we just can't explain. It's all over the world. There's this amazing thing. Well, we couldn't do that today. No. But it's evidence of this very high culture that had very high science. Now, what did they do? They showed up, and some of them, there's all over the world now. 10,000 years doesn't get rid of the stories. And it turns out they were all very similar. Tall, white, bearded guys, huh? Probably with green and azure eyes. They call them Quetzalcoatl or Viracocha. And they went to Babylon, they went to India, they went to places to kickstart civilization again. And wherever they went, they had this ability to use huge weights of stones and move them and build things. And lessons they put in the ground, like, here's the 3 stars of Orion's belt. Signals they left everywhere that we should look to as above, so below, the basis for the great sciences. Oh, they were good at it. They were really good at astrology. It explains why we have this highly developed astrology in India and the Mayan Olmecs, and the Chinese, but they're all quite different. Yes, the Babylonian doesn't look at all like the Mayan astrology. Well, yes, it does, but no, it doesn't, because these guys that came in, one guy said in a boat with no oars and no sails, they came along with several companions and civilized the people, taught them law, taught them herbs, taught them astrology, taught them building, engineering stuff. Wonderful kick-starting of civilization. It's all over the world. These were the remnants of the high civilization. Those few that escaped could no longer live in the places they did before. The comet destroyed them all. Sea level went up 400 feet. They all got washed away very quickly. Very, very quickly. Now, that brings us to the next chapter in this story that just came up about cow mutilations. So what we've established so far is that there were a bunch of people with green eyes and blue that were part of this ancient culture. And it seems like the Greys, or whoever they are selectively sampling the DNA of these people. We found out the timing of their sampling was because of the nuclear blink, and they had to get here quick before we had breaks in the DNA in the eggs of the ladies. Sampled all they could, and then the people abduction seemed to fade out, but there was also what they called cow mutilations. And I just saw a thing by Linda Moulton Howe. She did a video called Strange Harvest. The lady spent 30 years looking into these cow mutilations and found this is amazing, because the eye, the ear, the genitals, the nipple, the different parts of the cow's body were taken out in this extremely bloodless, high medicine way. They took the heart out of a cow without bothering the pericardium, the bag around the heart. So the more she studied these cow mutilations, the weirder it got. And they always took the same kind of things. Now, I don't think she's asked the question yet, but I did. I said, why cows? Why did they only mutilate their sampling? And the cows don't seem to be distressed. They're not flies. They tried to explain these things away, saying they were insects, all kinds of different things, but no. But they took the cows, not pigs, not horses, geese, etc. Why? Well, what struck me was a lot of the Nordic people, the blue-eyed people, all have lactase in their bodies. And they can digest lactose, the milk sugars, whereas the browner people and dark-eyed people from the tropics, they give up lactase when they get their teeth. So their milk, they call it milk allergy, it's just the opposite. But these Nordics can use cow milk all their life. They have lactase all their life. But why cows? Well, look, if you're going to go sample a bunch of green-eyed, azure-eyed people looking for the original human beings of Atlantis and Lemuria, the high types, you want some food for them. And what you use is cows, because cows are the best food. So the mutilation thing is another second wave of sampling to make sure they got the food. And what does this tell us about it all? Well, maybe it just tells us that they're going to clone human beings, at least those green-eyed ones, the Atlanteans, and they wanted to make sure they had the best food for them, and so they're also cloning the cows. Well, it's pretty much all calmed down now. We don't hear a lot of abductions. We're not seeing, there seems to be a few tourists coming around, a few UFOs, if you believe them, but it really calmed down. The abductions are over and the cow mutilations are over, and those guys came and got their DNA samples and made sure they were the very, very best they could find on the earth and left. We don't know the purpose of why they wanted this. Well, we know some of the purpose, that we're unique. Very unique. 3 billion years of evolution to build the supercomputer in your brain, in your head, and the animal body surrounding it. 3 billion years of quiet, location, location, location. And so, very valuable. It's worth coming all that way. When the first blinking started in 45, maybe we caught some in the late 40s. It took 3, 4, 5 years to get here. Yes, to start the sampling. They had to be fast. DDT came in right after World War II. But remember that the women have all the eggs in their body they will ever have in their life. So she's born with so-called unpolluted eggs before 1945, prime to sample. Anyway, that's my theory. I don't know this. No, I don't know it, but the facts add up. And the recent discoveries of the green-eyed stuff and the cow mutilations all fall into place. So I thought I'd share it with you.